Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
There's all this creative work you have to do to see inside the mind of that director and try and interpret that vision into something that fits in the world.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. Right now, a real seismic shift is happening in the film industry. This is your best chance to join a new filmmaking movement. You have been called to create an everlasting impact with your unmatched, deep desire to tell authentic stories. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast, episode number 34. And I am so elated to introduce my next guest, Benjamin Garst, who is an amazingly talented filmmaker. He's a producer, he's a director, cinematographer, all of the above. I let him get into the nitty-gritty details of the work. But Ben, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and reveal the one filmmaker secret that you have been keeping from us.
What's up, filmmakers? I'm Benjamin Garst, as George mentioned. My filmmaker secret. Wow, I actually hadn't prepared for like what is my filmmaker secret, but I think the one that I would say is it's gonna sound cliche because you hear it all the time if you have ever taken a film school course or anything, but I think it is the anchor is show don't tell. I mean, we're working in a visual medium. We tell stories with images, and those two things go hand in hand, and you have to be able to find your way of expressing how you see the world through an image.
That's a beautiful secret, Benjamin. I think a lot of times filmmakers tend to kind of get caught up in all of the technical and logistical aspects of filmmaking that I think that small nugget kind of gets, thrown by the wayside. So I appreciate that. Take me back, way back to the moment that you got the spark, that you knew you were meant to be a filmmaker. You were meant to tell stories to serve a particular audience. Describe to us what you were feeling, what was happening around you. Tell us that story.
I first became interested in film when I was in high school. I was the last class of my high school to have not very many requirements for core studies. So I was a skateboarder, and I was convinced that like skateboarding was my future. I was like, I was kind of blowing stuff off, and I was just like, I'm going to take every elective possible. And I got into like the TV production class and did like the morning announcements. And that was my junior and senior year. I did that. And we just turned at that time, this was in, right at the turn of the century, 2001, 2002. We just turned the morning announcement show into episodes of Jackass, essentially. Because that was where our teenage minds were. But then when I was 19, I worked on a feature film for the first time. It was, I was 18. And I'm thinking of a different feature film. Jeez, I was 18. I worked on this feature film. I did end up getting my stuff together and got accepted to Montana State for architecture. And then I worked on this feature film the summer before going to college. And I came home from that experience, and I immediately got online and was like, does Montana State have a film program? I hope they do. And it turned out they did. And it was, started by Robert Redford, and, it had all these glowing reviews, and I was like, done. changed my major, changed my classes that I signed up for. And I only did one semester there before I came back and took some time off before ending up at CU Denver, where I met you. But yeah, it was just, I was working as a grip on this feature film. And I think it just all clicked. I was like, you can do this for a living. And I'd never thought of it, but seeing all these people turn up for this indie film, and people, you know, who were just people in the neighborhood who were, you know, the police and the medics, and like the people who, you know, the types of roles that you see these people every day doing their jobs, but they're also necessary on film sets. And it's not just the actors. It's not just the stuff that we think of, the lighting, the camera, the sound, the directors, all the glitz and glam of what goes into production. It was also just that, like, everybody shows up for this. It doesn't really matter you don't have to be a filmmaker to be in film. And that was just a really cool realization for me. And, you know, I was always drawn to the arts, and I'm the only really working artist in my family and from any generation. And it's just, I didn't grow up thinking that you could do this stuff for a living. And when it clicked, I was just like, I'm there. Take me to film. That's what I want to do.
That's such an interesting shift too, from going from architecture to filmmaking. And I find that parallel with myself as well, where, you know, I immigrated from Kazakhstan in 2001. So it's been 20 years now, but I grew up not even thinking about the fact that there are people that work to make the movies that we watch, and putting it into that perspective of that abundance and that sort of, you know, it's truly the land of opportunity when you think about the filmmaking world overall. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What is it about filmmakers that makes them so absolutely, what's the word I'm looking for? Gung-ho, I guess. It's that absolute love for the craft, and, you know, this grit to go and achieve the things that they want to achieve. What is it about filmmakers and artists in themselves that make them that way?
I don't know. I guess we all like to suffer. No, that's my go-to joke answer. I mean, but it is. I mean, I do always like to emphasize the work that goes into it, because it is work. It's really fun, and it's really fun especially when you get to work on something of your own, and you're seeing your own visions come to life on screen. But I think it's that, you know, it must be the same feeling, because my brother's a scientist. And so I sometimes equate it to that, because, you know, he's in a lab in a microscope messing with RNA and all this stuff. And, you know, he's kind of playing God. And that's kind of what we're doing too, right? We're building worlds. We get to create with our own hands and imaginations, like whole other universes that people can, you know, be a part of for an hour, or, you know, 15 minutes or whatever it is, and whatever length of format you're working in. But yeah, you get to kind of play God for a little bit. It's, you know, it's like when you're a kid on the playground and you know, there's no rules, right? You're just like, okay, now I'm Superman. I get to go, you know, I get to go fly across this thing and run across the monkey bars or whatever it is you're doing. Probably not that. That sounds dangerous, but
I've done that.
Like it. Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's kind of the main draw to it. And playing God is maybe like not the best phrase for it, but it's just that idea that you get to create something from scratch that's purely from your imagination. And if you're not the director, or you're in one of those other roles, there's all this creative work you have to do to see inside the mind of that director and try and interpret that vision into something that fits in the world.
Beautiful. I think it's a very exciting prospect to be able to, as you say, play God, but it is all about telling the stories that can truly make an impact in the world. You know, you pick an audience, your niche, your story, your character development, all of those things. And it's such a collaborative art form with, like you said, with everybody's, vision kind of serving the vision of the director, which in turn serves the vision of the story that has a very particular and purposeful and intentional message. I'm always curious to know about the first successful film that, whatever you consider it to be a success. What was that first film that you created, that you were in that director role, that you felt like, your vision to becoming a filmmaker was truly confirmed?
That's a cool question. Honestly, it was the first time I worked with a real script in film school. The earlier production classes, you kind of had these assignments to just go out and create something within certain parameters and had to be a target length. And otherwise it was just kind of like, do it. And, you didn't have tons of screenwriting experience at that time either, or an understanding of how to like pull something out of a screenplay, how to extract from the screenplay what it's going to be visually. And I worked on this project with Luke Sorgi, who anyone from Denver will probably recognize the name.
Shout out to Luke.
Film community. Yeah, Luke's the best. And we got partnered up in an acting class or a directing class where we had to do something. And I kind of, dipped into two pools here and did my production class and my directing class project as one project. And it was
cutting
Luke's
corners.
script.
I like it.
Yeah. I was always trying to get a little bit creative with how I approach things. But Luke did an adaptation of a Hemingway short story that he made contemporary, and we filmed it in my mom's house in one shoot day. And essentially, the reason that one is the one that I feel like I reference as like the film that made me realize this was like something I was meant to do, or that I felt like I should definitely still stay on this path and continue doing this, was just everything went wrong. It was a nightmare. Like the DP like brought his own camera. We were going to shoot it in HD. This was before, this was when like we were still transitioning out of SD into like HD. If that dates me at all.
Shooting on tapes and transcribing them down into digital format in order just to be able to edit. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, if you're a young filmmaker who's listening right now and you don't know what SD is, that's standard definition, and that would be the equivalent to the setting on YouTube that is 480p. Which if you have a TV that you are hooked up to, if you expand that to full screen, you're just looking at pixels basically.
Right.
So his camera wasn't recording in HD for some reason. I think it was new and he was still figuring out the settings. I had a Panasonic, oh my God, the DVX 100.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had that, and he was on the HVX 200. What he discovered is that if he brought it back down to standard def, he'd be able to record for the day. And we lost like 3 hours like troubleshooting this. So we popped tapes in. I ran second camera. I ran my camera. He shot on his camera. And so I was directing and filming, and we had to shoot the entire thing still. We had like 8 hours left in the day to shoot this thing. And, the reason I cite this one as such a formative experience for me is because that's where your real directors and filmmakers mettle will be tested is on those days when everything goes wrong. And it's your ability to just think on your toes and make quick decisions and make a good sacrifice and still make your movie, and still be happy with it and still like love what you got. I mean, in a lot of ways, like, I don't know what that movie would have been if we hadn't shot it that way. Part of what made it great and it ended up, doing pretty well in terms of being like something that people enjoyed. It was the first film that I got into a film festival with my name on the credits as a director. So that was amazing too. Like, and it was just like pure drive that got us through the whole experience.
And that launched the rest is history, right? As they say. Yeah. That's amazing. So we kind of talked about the past. I'd love to know about what's happening right now. I've been following you for a little while, just kind of looking to what's happening. I'd like to keep in touch with people, and I've been seeing a few accolades and a few things here and there. You're still grinding. You're still working. What's going on?
So currently I'm in Denver, Colorado. I'm still working for the company that I was in New York working for the past 7 years, on contract / full-time. It's sort of evolving every year. We started off, it was just 3 of us, and there's a lot of branded content and stuff. And now it's evolved into their contracts tend to be a lot of like digital series and original series. And right now I'm their supervising producer on a number of projects for Magnolia Digital. So that was part of the Discovery Plus launch. And we've turned out like 4 or 5 series for them now. And we have one going into production next week that is remote shooting in Mexico. And I'll be on the Zoom feed producing from my comfortable chair here in Colorado. And that's the work side of stuff is like, it's a lot of that. And the supervising producer role is in a lot of ways, just the title. I'm definitely doing a lot of actual supervising producer duties, but it's also in a lot of ways, like I was their Swiss Army knife for so long that, it's kind of a catch-all for a lot of the like post supervising, helping, get the productions off the ground and make sure we have crew and equipment and that, people have what they need to go do things, and, making sure my editors are happy and not overworked.
Very important.
I'm a big advocate for that. That's one of my big soapbox things right now, is just trying to keep people's hours reasonable, and so they can have a home life and a social life. And then on the side, when I have time, I'm doing films. So I have a film that I DP'd last summer that I'm editing. It's a short film, and I can't say much about it because there's some career oriented politics for the director. And,
well, shoot, the rest of my interview were just questions about that.
But I know, and I hate that. That's one of the I always used to get annoyed when people would be like, I can't talk about this project, and now I have one of those, and I'm like, this is annoying. But it's a short film. It's a narrative film. And I'm also the editor on that, which is great. I get to keep all my skills as sharp as I can, I guess. I'm constantly taking work, doing whatever I can take.
Yeah. So, without giving away, obviously, any information, there's been sort of this theme of wearing multiple hats, right? And that's something that any filmmaker is very familiar with, especially starting out. You're going to be wearing a lot of hats. How do you deal with, shifting from one role to another on the same project and not get sort of convoluted or lost, and still keeping that story alive? What's your trick?
I've kind of, and maybe this will come around to bite me long term, but I always do this thing where I refer to myself as producer Ben or editor Ben or director of photography Ben.
Some schizophrenia there.
Yeah, a little bit. So when I'm like, and it helps, but it helps me because I'll be like, I'll do this thing where I'm like, okay, I have to think like producer Ben right now, and producer Ben and director of photography Ben do not get along. Like, producer Ben, does not want director of photography Ben to do the things that he does, and director of photography Ben doesn't give a shit what producer Ben says.
Right.
Unfortunately, but that does, sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's harmful. But on that short film I was just referring to, I was also a co-producer. So I was co-producing through my company Pixel Smith, as well as director of photography and operating the camera. And on that project, I was very much more mindful of producer Ben, because producer Ben was holding it down. Producer Ben was like the glue for the production. I was working with a lot of less experienced crew, and it was a first time director, first time, executive producer. Long story short, it's a couple, it's a husband and wife who wanted to do this project, and a lot of non-experienced talent, like untrained, like non-actors. So, I was coming into this thing with more experience than like a lot of people on the set, and minus like our sound guy. We had an amazing sound operator. And yeah, I was like, if I don't heed producer Ben, this is a runaway train. Like, so I constantly, as the DP, had producer Ben in the back of my head saying, like, I know you want 3 more takes, but you get 1.
The one take wonders.
Yeah.
So over, you've had quite a breadth of work and in a certain period of time of your kind of coming up to becoming a filmmaker, and then really just grinding and constantly improving and learning every day from every kind of thing. What would you say has been the biggest lesson over the years that you've really taken to heart, and you've kind of, it almost kind of is always at the back of your head every time you step on set? What's that one big lesson?
Well, just to echo it again, my instinct is to say the decision making, like making fast decisions, just being ready for everything to go wrong. But that is the other side of the coin of be as prepared as you possibly can be. Do as much work up front, to project some schizophrenia to the audience here. Like, you can also do the same thing with like a temporal version of yourself where you want to set up the best scenario as possible for future you when you're in pre-production. So pre-production you should be doing as much work as possible to make sure that production you doesn't have a terrible time.
That's amazing.
So the prep, I mean, that I'm going to go with, fix it in prep, which I think is one of your shirts, right?
Yeah, it is. I appreciate you saying that, because it's something that I hark on all the time. I always say, like, pre-production is one of the most, if not the most important aspect of the whole filmmaking process, because I like to think about it like a house. So like the soil is our story, and the house that you want to build is the actual film. right? So what's the foundation? Or what is the pre-production? The pre-production is the foundation of the house. So without that foundation, the house is going to fall apart. You're not going to have your viewers or your tenants move into that house to pay the rent for you to be able to make profit. So I always kind of think about that analogy and remind myself and try to remind my filmmakers that the more you prepare, even if nothing about your film ends up being what you initially set out to be, the fact that you had a plan and you prepared as much as you could set you up for success that much more in production, as well as in post, as well as in, distribution, exhibition, whatever it is, doing the festival around, selling that clip or that video to a client to make it, a repeat business, whatever kind of industry of the filmmaking world that you're in, the pre-production is what's going to set you up for success. So I appreciate that so much. Ben, I love the way your mind works. I say this to a lot of filmmakers, but I'm constantly being fascinated by just having these more in-depth conversations. And I could keep talking to you for hours. I have just a couple more questions for you. Where can my filmmakers go to find out more about you?
I've not been on social media a lot lately. So the best place is still my website, benjamingarst.com. My reel is up to date as of last year.
I watched it. It's beautiful.
As everyone knows, production is slowed down. So I have stuff to add to it. I'm kind of holding off until there's a little bit more. I'd like to kind of do like a kind of batch update on that, but that's where a lot of my stuff is now. The company's website is pixelsmith.com, but it's Pixel, the normal spelling, SMYTH. And that, as these projects that I've been working on start to wrap up, those will start to have updates as well. Again, like everything kind of, as everyone knows, got put on hold a bit last year for some reason. And
nobody knows why. I'll make sure to have all of those links in the show notes. So please, filmmakers, go and check out Benjamin's work. I've been a fan of his. I've been a friend of his for a long time. And I think it is beneficial to filmmakers to watch other filmmakers' work, to learn from, to gather inspiration, to understand what good storytelling is, what bad storytelling is, because I don't take off my old stuff just for that sake of having, that history of the things that I did in the past. And I obviously keep it hidden, but it is there. You can find it. But I appreciate you being on Filmmaker Secrets podcast, Ben. I have one last question for you. Yeah. This is a doozy. If you, so let me rephrase that one more time.
I'm like nervous.
Me too. You can tell. What is your deserted island movie? I've been saying it desert island movie in all my previous podcasts. And then I realized that is the wrong way to say it. It's not a desert island. It's deserted island. Anyway, I'm an immigrant. So there's my excuse. If you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Man. I mean, I'm going to go with the one that I have always gone with since I saw it, and that's Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
All right.
I'm a huge fan of Edgar Wright. I think if you are interested in good filmmaking, he's somebody who is also very interested in good filmmaking, and his films always show that. I think I've always been drawn to him because you can tell he's not just a filmmaker. He's a perpetual student of the craft, constantly exercising things that he has seen other people doing and reinventing them in his own way, in his own worlds that he's built. Scott Pilgrim is an adaptation, and there's a lot of visual source material that he pulled from, but it's just so fun. It's so well done. And
the visual storytelling is almost a movie in and of itself. I'm kind of inspired to read the screenplay just to see the parallel between what the visuals are like and how that was sort of described, in the action lines, because that's right. that's something that you have to assume was innately embedded within the story because it's just so apparent when you're watching the actual film. That's a great choice. I haven't seen it in a long time. You just inspired me to watch it again, read the screenplay. And that is an exercise that every filmmaker should be doing, is read the screenplay, watch the film. Read the screenplay, watch the film.
And the other great thing I'll leave with that one is that it also, if you're studying how to shoot your scenes, or you're trying to figure out how to go about that, there's a great article in American Cinematographer about how they filmed Scott Pilgrim, and they shot it almost entirely chronologically, which is not usually how films are made. Wow. And they also they didn't shoot coverage. They basically shot, every shot is like has an intended moment of time. And there's like not over, like they basically edited it in pre-production. It was edited before they even turned the cameras on, which is part of why I became so fascinated with studying that film myself.
Yeah, it's magical. Intention over coverage. I love it. Yep. I love the intentionality of that. Well, amazing. Benjamin, thank you so much for your insight, your knowledge, your humor. It's been so great catching up with you. And anytime you want to come back on the show, please do. Thank you so much for being a guest on Filmmaker Secrets podcast.
Thank you, George.
If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.